Hello and welcome to my YouTube channel once again. Today we have the case of Paulette Guevara Farah. Again, I already covered this story here many years ago. But as you can imagine, I don't like the amount of time I dedicated to it. I don't like how it turned out. I simply think that in reality, I could do it much better. I could explain myself much more. And being such a well-known case in Mexico and in the world, I now think it's appropriate that we make a better video about it. This case was very media-heavy. It had a lot of theories from the public. And to this day, there are still people who are not very sure about what happened and what the truth is. So let's delve into that. In the year 2001, after some time of dating, Lisette, one of the daughters of the influential and wealthy family of Lebanese origin, Farah, married Mauricio Guevara, another young man from the Mexican high society who was dedicated to selling real estate, being one of the best in his field. The couple seemed to have everything necessary to be happy and to have a perfect life. Not only were they young and in love with each other, but they also had a lot of money to secure the life they desired. And as part of it, they bought a luxurious 2-story apartment in Huixquilucan, a metropolitan locality located in the state of Mexico. Their apartment belonged to a luxurious condominium of several buildings called Garden House within the Hacienda del Ciervo, a private neighborhood they had chosen due to its security and amenities. Their idea was to start a family there, and they didn't take long to do it. The following year, after settling in the place, that is, in 2002, they welcomed their first daughter, whom they named Lisette, like her mother. Although to avoid confusion, they called her Chess. 3 years later, on July 20th of 2005, their second daughter joined the family, whom they named Paulette. Unlike their firstborn, their second daughter was born much earlier than expected, while Lisette was approximately 25 weeks pregnant, that is, 5 months. When Paulette was born, she barely weighed 800 grams and was only 34 centimeters long. But her size was not the biggest problem, it was her health. Due to her very premature birth, her health was delicate from the moment she was born. And that very thing caused her to suffer a stroke in the left part of her brain a few hours after she was born. This stroke would have severe consequences for the little baby. While she managed to survive all the adversities, she did so with a serious motor problem and an equally severe speech disorder. Although her cognitive ability was intact, meaning that the stroke had not affected her intelligence or understanding of the world in any way, Paulette left the hospital after months with a medical prognosis that she would never be able to walk again. However, her parents did not limit themselves to the opinion of the doctors at that hospital, making use of their money and contacts. Lisette and Mauricio spent the next few years visiting different doctors and trying different treatments, among which was equine therapy, which seemed to be the one that had the most success with their daughter, by the time she had to start her formal education in preschool. At 4 years old, Paulette had far exceeded the predictions of the doctors, who had treated her at the beginning of her life. She walked with quite a bit of difficulty, but she was able to move at her own will. And while she needed help with some tasks, like dressing, it was much more than her parents had even dreamed of. The Guevara family's apartment was completely modified with the arrival of Paulette. Having to adapt not only certain places in their home, but also their routines, Lisette decided to fully dedicate herself to her daughters. But for this, she had plenty of help. She had 2 nannies, in addition to a domestic worker who made sure to clean and cook while she did other tasks. In 2009, they enrolled Paulette in Cricri, one of the most prestigious kindergartens at that time, although the decision had nothing to do with its prestige, but with the services it offered. Cricri was one of the few institutions that had several assistants specialized in children with disabilities, who were assigned to these little ones to be with them and help them with their specific problems. In Paulette's case, it would be her speech and mobility. Even though Paulette couldn't communicate easily, she had no problem adapting to being friends. Immediately, Carmen Valles, the kindergarten director, described her as very enthusiastic, making the greatest effort to carry out her activities herself. She said her parents were very interested in their daughter's performance and well-being. So it was common for them to attend meetings, and be involved in school activities. As for her classmates, there were many who adored her. Due to her speech disorder, Paulette couldn't say her full name, so she introduced herself as Po, which quickly became her nickname among friends. Paulette led an unusual life, undoubtedly facing numerous challenges. But beyond her clear health problems, thanks to her family's resources, she was able to live the best way possible until March of 2010. About 10 days before the events occurred, Paulette began to miss kindergarten. That first day of absence was Friday, March 12th, when Lisette contacted the kindergarten to let them know that her daughter would be absent due to health problems. Although she never mentioned what had really happened to Paulette, or when she was going to return to class, which in fact never happened. On Sunday, March 21st, Paulette returned from a trip to Val de Bravo, a very touristy city in the state of Mexico. She had gone with her father and older sister, accompanied by the nanny Erica. On the other hand, her mother, Lisette, had taken another trip with a friend for her birthday, so she was not with them. They were there until nightfall, had dinner out, and returned to the apartment where Lisette was waiting for them. Mauricio had returned very tired from driving between the two cities, so he went straight to bed, leaving his wife to put the little ones to sleep. Lisette had spent the weekend traveling with her friends in Los Cabos, so she was eager to see her daughters and spend at least a few minutes with them. So she let them stay up until 21:30, a little later than their usual bedtime. After that time, she helped them to bed, as they needed to rest for school the next day. Before 10 o'clock at night, both Chess and Paulette were in their respective rooms, already sleeping, so Lisette did the same and went to bed with her husband. At some point during that early morning, the Guevara's life would change forever. On the morning of Monday, March 22nd, Paulette's parents had decided that it was time for her to return to school. So, while Mauricio was getting dressed and ready for work, Erica, the nanny, had to wake up the youngest of the girls. Since Paulette needed help getting dressed, Erica decided to go directly to wake her up. As usual, she entered her room, went to the windows, opened the curtains, and let the sun in. Find the sun. Normally, when she did this, Paulette would wake up, see her, and greet her. But that morning was different. Confused at not hearing the girl, Erica turned around to make sure everything was okay with Paulette. But when she looked at the double bed, that's when she realized she wasn't there. Surprised, Erica approached the bed to lift all the sheets, the blanket, whatever was there, interrupting, looking for the girl. Increasingly confused, the nanny left the room and ran into Mauricio in the hallway. She thought that maybe he or his wife had woken up Paulette before she could do it, so she decided to clear her doubts and immediately asked him if he had seen his youngest daughter. Completely distracted, Mauricio told her no, and that he would ask Lisette. Without hesitation, Erica headed to the main suite to talk to her. Lisette was still a bit sleepy, until the nanny asked her if, by any chance, Paulette was with her. Surprised, Lisette woke up and said, "What do you mean she's not here?" "Go, please, check the playroom. Or could she have gone out with her father?" Erica obeyed. She continued to search for Paulette all over the house, while Lisette got up to have a coffee and smoke a cigarette. Neither she nor her husband were really worried. They still seemed to believe that Paulette was somewhere in the house. In an attempt to resolve everything, before going to work, Mauricio started opening closets and the various doors of the apartment looking for his youngest daughter, but he had no luck. Then, Lisette asked her husband to check what would be the building's pool. She requested assistance from the maintenance manager and neighbors to remove the pool cover. There were no traces of Paulette in the water. Chess, 7, had left for school earlier, so Lisette and Mauricio came to think that maybe Paulette had followed her, somehow managing to get on the school bus. However, after thinking about it a bit, they realized that it was a rather illogical hypothesis, considering the mobility problems the girl had. Still not very convinced, and without any other idea of what could have happened, Lisette decided to change to go to the security office of the complex where they lived and ask the guards to see the security camera footage. However, this was impossible. Security informed her that the cameras allowed live viewing, but did not record. So there was no way to verify whether her younger daughter had followed her sister or not. While his wife was talking to them, Mauricio checked all possible entrances to the apartment. Doors and windows were intact, so it didn't seem like anyone had forced their way in. At that moment, Mauricio calls his sister Margaret, who, in turn worried, calls a friend, and they contact the police to start the search. She is the one who makes the report. Half an hour later, the authorities arrived at the complex to check it from top to bottom. Their main hypothesis was kidnapping, but there doesn't seem to be any indication that this had happened. However, this did not cause the police to lose interest. On the contrary. Thanks to the family's influence, the mayor got involved in the case and called the Attorney General of the state of Mexico. By the afternoon of Monday, March 22nd, the Attorney General's office of the state of Mexico had already disseminated a photo of Paulette and her information, officially starting a massive search. Simultaneously, as Paulette's family took action, her aunt, Arlette Farah, launched a social media campaign, beginning with dissemination emails, and she continued uploading photos of her niece to various social networks, which quickly began to be shared, going viral. Over the next 4 days, Paulette's parents used their influence to get all Mexican media to talk about their daughter's disappearance. Not only did Mauricio and Lisette appear several times a day on different television programs speaking, but they had produced and paid for at least 4 ads to be shown in the daily programming. While posters with Paulette's photo information were appearing all over the state of Mexico, the case received a lot of attention from the very beginning. The idea that a disabled girl had disappeared was already something horrendous, but the fact that she had disappeared from her own room made it even worse. If a girl with difficulties moving had disappeared from her own bed in the middle of the night, without her parents knowing, it meant that this could happen anywhere.
I put my daughter to bed around...
In this bed?
In this one.
Bed? Is this Paulette's bed?
And she asks, is he breaking it in apart? I told her to go look for it. She must have left it behind. Dad or Tata, where is it?
Come back.
And he tells me the girl is not here, ma'am. And then I run into my husband. He told me the girl is not with me.
Do you have any idea?
All I want is for my daughter to show up.
But don't you have any idea?
Enough!
I'm out of ideas.
Every Mexican news program was talking about the topic of how strange, the attitudes. Incredibly, the first thing they did was blame the nannies. Did they have something against the Guevara Farah family?
Marta was in charge of what is the cleaning of the house, and Erica in particular of Paulette of the girls. It was an obligation, particularly for Paulette, of her to the girls.
Did the nanny somehow receive special instruction after Paulette's disappearance?
Nope. In some statements made by Erica, all she says is that the mother tells her that she knows Erica has nothing to do with it. Don't worry, it'll be all right.
As often occurs in these public cases, as the days went by, the media and society itself began to judge the way the parents presented themselves on television. In the interviews that Lisette had given, she always spoke of a kidnapper to whom she pleaded, please, to return her daughter. Without shedding a single tear, she promised that she would not take any action if he returned her daughter.
Salvador? There has been a lot of talk about Lisette Farah's personality, a cold, detached, lying woman. Have Erica and Marta said anything about this woman's personality?
The same, that she was very detached from the girl Paulette in particular, and that she was more akin to the other girl.
Her husband, Mauricio, also seemed unaffected by their current situation, and while refusing to feel any emotion can be an emotional response in itself, the response Mauricio gave when asked about it was what made people start to see him differently. He said he had to protect his image and avoid looking ridiculous. Meanwhile, journalists and the general public began to distrust the girl's parents and whisper different hypotheses about what could have happened to Paulette. The police investigation continued. The kidnapping hypothesis was still one of the most supported by the Attorney General's office of the state of Mexico, but there were still no clear indications to support this theory. In addition, in the days that had passed since the girl's disappearance, no one had contacted the family to ask for a ransom. In an attempt to find out what had happened in the early hours of Monday, March 22nd, the police and the prosecutors in charge of the case carried out hundreds of expert examinations in the luxurious apartment. They brought trained dogs to check the house and even the day. 26. It was reviewed by prosecutor Alberto Basbas, who, despite his experience, found nothing out of the ordinary in the family's house. Up to this point, then, we have a fairly thorough investigation of the apartment where the family lived. They checked that place over and over again. Nobody found anything. Although it had not yet been made public, investigators had begun to suspect the couple. They had also discovered that there were certain inconsistencies between their statements and those that the nannies, Erica and Marta, had given. Just about 3 days after Basbas's visit to the Guevara's house, Farah decided that she was going to route the entire family and the 2 nannies. They were to be transferred to a hotel from which they couldn't leave, without providing reasons or specifying their destination. On March 30th, Prosecutor Vazvaz said the following to the media.
Each of them, at a certain point, has falsified their statement, which has made it difficult to know the truth of the facts or establish a firm line of investigation.
With the family out of the house, the authorities were set to do a 5th reconstruction of events on the 31st of March. It extended until the early morning and included the presence of police officers, trained dogs, and everything necessary. An architect hired for a planimetry exercise in Paulette's room lifted the sheets and found, against all odds, the body of the girl. The impression was such that he ended up running to the bathroom to vomit. Upon lifting the mattress of the girl's bed, they found her body underneath. He was hidden among sheets and blankets, but the stench of 9 days of decomposition completely permeated them. The news spread quickly, and all of Mexico was in shock. Paulette had been in her room the whole time, the same room that dozens of journalists had entered to hear Lisette speak. None of this made sense. How had they not seen her before? How could they overlook the fact that a girl, a body already decomposing, was in the same bed from where she had disappeared? 9 days of investigation, and not a single person had checked there. No. It really wasn't possible. This could never have gone unnoticed. For starters, how could the parents not notice the smell of decomposition that was increasing day by day? But even worse, how could it be that the family friend, Amanda de la Rosa, who had come to support them and had been sleeping in that bed, didn't notice? The first thing that was reported in newspapers and on television was that she had been found in a black garbage bag, something that was later denied. And that, in fact, in the video in which they show how they found her, it can be seen that she is not in any bag. The forensic autopsy determined that Paulette had died due to mechanical asphyxia from obstruction of the nasal cavities and compression of the abdominal thorax. She had no signs of having been sexually assaulted, nor did her body have marks that corresponded to physical abuse. It was concluded that she had died between 5 and 9 days before the body was found. That is, she could have died that very night. Furthermore, the body indicated that Paulette had died in the same place where she was found, in that very position. The girl still had a bit of fresh blood on her hand, which suggests she could have remained alive in that place for several hours. One of the prosecutors, Mr. Castillo, immediately asserted that the reason there was no smell, or the reason why no one had found Paulette until that very moment, the reason why, in none of the 9-10 days she was there, that terrible smell was felt, was because Paulette had been embalmed. That this effect had occurred when she was covered by her sheets. The investigators were as shocked as the general population, while they still highly suspected Paulette's parents. They also added Amanda to their list, who had literally been sleeping on the body for 4 days. She was severely interrogated for hours, but it was ultimately concluded that the woman had no knowledge of what had happened, and she was released. As for Lisette, it was a bit more complicated. On April 3rd, the woman decided to start a trial for the accusations and the arraigo that the police authorities had put on her. She wanted to prove that she had nothing to do with her daughter's death.
Because I can't continue living here due to the social harassment I'm experiencing, and my daughter, right? They caused all this damage, a moral damage. To me, a social hatred because I can't go out on the street. They still yell murderer at me. They want to kill me every day. I have threats. I don't have the possibility to work. And if I go abroad, I am a lawyer. There I will not be able to practice my profession. Why? Because the laws are different. Mr. Rafael Jimenez did me the favor of providing me a security guard and an armored van, seeing what I was exposed to, right? Was the complaint also raised for threats?
The next day, the judge in charge released them, saying there was no conclusive evidence against them, although they were forbidden to leave the country. From all of this, the family didn't come out the same. Mauricio and Lisette came out completely at odds. When they were taken to give individual statements on April 5th, Lisette said that her husband blamed her for their daughter's death. The real estate agent was convinced that what had happened was not an accident. And it's because the forensic report from Paulette's autopsy had concluded what happened as an accident. It suggested that the girl had rolled over on her own on the bed and accidentally fell head first into the space between the mattress and the bed, dying of suffocation and remaining trapped for 9 days before being found. The relationship in the family was so broken that only the Guevaras attended the wake and only the Farahs attended the burial in the French Pantheon of Mexico City.
Let's not give it a sensationalist tone. Let's give it the tone it deserves. Let the girl rest in peace. Let her be with God.
Ches, the eldest daughter of the marriage, had been staying with her father's family, and when Lisette tried to see her, the Guevaras denied it. They didn't trust her. Furious, Lisette filed a lawsuit against her husband, and after about a month of legal litigation, in early May, she regained custody of her eldest daughter. By that time, the investigation continued to focus on the case. They wanted to rule out any hypothesis before closing the case as an accident, and that's why they closely studied the entire family, which led them to discover things like a lover of Lisette named Roberto Ayala. Despite this and other secrets, the investigation made no clear progress. The necessary evidence to blame anyone was not found 2 months after Paulette's disappearance. The prosecutor closed the investigation, saying that the girl's death was nothing more than a stupid accident.
Finally, caused by mechanical asphyxia by suffocation in its form of occlusion of respiratory orifices and abdominal thoracic compression. Instead of their discovery, are they another reason for the complexity that this investigation has implied?
Estas conclusiones son coherentes con el contenido de las distintas opiniones periciales y dan fortaleza a la conclusión de esta investigación. Ante las constancias.
He had to publicly admit that the police and fiscal action had been extremely negligent. And clearly they hadn't searched carefully. In Paulette's room, I think that's an overstatement. It goes without saying that they didn't search well. It's more like it's impossible. However, neither this nor the closing of the case stopped people from talking about it or controversies from arising about what had happened. One of the things we surely need to discuss in this video is the bed, because for me it's the most essential. It's the main thing to understand what's wrong with this case. Because after all, one could simply say that the attitudes of all the people involved, including the investigators, are strange, but not impossible. One could say, well, yes, it's okay. They're incompetent. But the part about the bed is what brings down the whole case. Everything that was said, everything that is official, goes away when you look at the bed. And I'm going to need you to look at the screen for this part, because it's possible that some things may not have been clear to you. If you're listening to this as a podcast, I'm going to try to be as detailed as possible. Now, Paulette's bed was peculiar, so to speak, as it had a drawer underneath. But this didn't go all the way to the end of the mattress, leaving an empty space. Imagine an empty rectangle under the bed, which is completely hidden by the mattress and sheets. Up to that point, what happened at the beginning is understandable, at least what happened on the first day of the search. One would not think that the girl could be in such a small space. Unless it happened before, unless it was regular for her to choose to hide there. Rather, the first thing that at least I would think of is to look outside, fearing that she could leave without having seen her. Up to there, we're fine. It seems to me that the first hour of search, it's not so strange that they looked for her outside. However, 9 days. And considering the circumstances in which the body was found, that's another matter. What impressed people the most, anyway, was that the body was found immediately after a blackout, a power outage. When the electricity came back, magically, there was Paulette. A very important detail is also that the report stated that they had already searched there, in that space. That they had already looked there, that they had already turned the mattress over, that they had already removed the sheets, the bed apart. It was made several times in that period of time, so it's very hard not to find her. There are only 2 options. Either she wasn't there, or they didn't look. And which one is the truth? Luminol tests were also conducted, the chemical that reacts, among other things, to blood. But this was outside the apartment and in common areas. Not in the room, not in the bed. Actually, most peculiar about the situation was that the bed was made and nobody noticed where the body ended up. Because in all of this, we could say that the investigators, the forensic scientists, or whoever was putting their hands in that room, didn't make the report. Perhaps they failed to properly inspect the bed and simply marked it as checked. One could say that, but Paulette's nannies, they did make the bed, they did put their hands there. In fact, from the prosecutor's office, they were asked to show how they made the bed in the reconstruction of the events that was done.
During the reenactment, Javier was spotted at the tower questioning one of the nannies, according to a witness. How was it that they made the beds?
That's right, where they put their hands as they swaddled, let's say, the sheets, right? Paulette's body was found in this bed days later.
Without shaking the bed, one of them arranges the pillows from the headboard, spreads the sheets.
Can I tell you something important?
I think it's, besides saying it's obvious, that if you put your hands down there, you're going to notice that there's something. And it's not just noticing. They couldn't see her there. They couldn't feel her there, or they thought they were things that were under the bed. But when they opened a little bit to put the sheets, they should have smelled the decomposing body. The main hypothesis is that due to the motor problems that Paulette had, once she fell, she could not get out. But then, the sheets should indicate a little what happened. They should have left a trail. To top it off, to properly make a bed, you have to take off the sheets and put them back on. All of this requires touching the mattress. Seeing this, I want you to watch the video of how Paulette's body was discovered. It's blurred out with the purpose of not showing you something inappropriate or morbid. But it's necessary for you to understand how impossible it is to do what the nanny did and not discover the body.
This is how the scene was. It's the moment when the experts
arrive at that
room. Of course, we must remember that the parents were no longer there.
They were rooted.
A rooting had taken place because the prosecutor decides so to continue with investigation, and that's when the experts arrive and dissect it part by part.
We are covering the image because it is very strong, but well...
Exactly. At this moment, you are going to be able to see a white thing barely coming out when they remove the sheets. That is the girl's leg. So, we can easily observe that it was visible from afar, and when the sheets were removed. That is, it didn't require much movement, or even removing the mattress too much to be able to see it. It was very close to the surface. It would be hard not to see it, also hard to make the bed, and for it to fall into that space under the mattress. From the start, the testimonies are very different from the final result. Both, Erica and Lisette say that they tucked Paulette in that night, covered her well, and, as is customary, they gave her her stuffed animals to sleep with. But Erica says about the following morning that she went to the room and the bed was made, that it was mostly tidy. So, how did she get tangled up and end up in a bad position, suffocated among her own sheets, if everything was well organized? Did the sheets disappear? The same prosecutor Castillo stated that the bed was tidy and that there was no displacement of sheets. He also adds that there were pillows on the sides so that Paulette wouldn't fall off. Apart from this detail that neither of the two women declared, it is evident that there is a big problem here. Again, why was Paulette found covered with a sheet? And it falls into a contradiction, because if there was no displacement, why did he claim that Paulette had miraculously been embalmed by her sheets? Which, I must say, is impossible. In case you had any doubts, it would even be quite the opposite. The sheet, whatever covered it, would make the situation much worse, because it would be impregnated with the liquids, gases, smells of decomposition. That room would have had to be a refrigerator for the body not to be detected, for decomposition not to occur, for all that smell not to be released. I'm not going to put the girl's photo for many obvious reasons, but we're going to put drawings in its place. Please look at the screen, as it's quite unsettling, all right? The body was literally found like this. I repeat this and we made some drawings, because it seems impossible to me. I think about it over and over again. I try to find the logic in it. That for 9 or 10 days, there were people coming and going, but nobody noticed or saw anything strange. I, who am particularly sensitive to smells, can't even imagine this situation. An experienced forensic scientist couldn't concede that this could happen. What I'm getting at is, wasn't the body found well hidden under the bed? Maybe under something else. Maybe under another piece of furniture or clothes, or something similar. But it was there, nothing more. Despite everything, beyond what we might think or what can be proven, it seems to me that it's obvious the investigation was a disaster. A laughingstock. Where has it been seen that the room from which a child disappears is used as an activity center? No matter how much they did the corresponding expertise that they didn't do, then they let everyone come to see. They stepped wherever they wanted, touched everywhere, and let the family move the items there as they pleased. To give you an idea, not only were there a lot of interviews, which requires cameramen, journalists to come in, but there was also a lot of people from the police who shouldn't have been in there. The experts. Everyone was there, stepping on and even using Paulette's bathroom. The bathroom that was in the room was being used. That room from where she disappeared. For all they knew, the place where all the clues should have been was not properly analyzed or secured. For an investigation to go well, you can't allow just anyone to enter the place. Moreover, what was the need for investigators, police officers, experts to use Paulette's bathroom? You don't touch the space in which an investigation is still ongoing.
All the monitoring systems that exist, taking the girl away seems absurd to me. That's what I hold on to the most. It's why I'm not desperate to think about how they did it, because it's clear to me
that there's something more to all this.
Yeah.
We're going to find this same expression later on, just 2 seconds later, and at 2 minutes, 27 seconds, it's the expression again. Here's an interesting combination of disgust, but also with anger. Something that also draws attention in the paralinguistic language, that is, in tone volume, from Paulette's mom. Every time she talks about her daughter, it seems she does it annoyed, angry. She even has certain micro-expressions.
Of disgust.
He always does it when he's talking about the situation in relation to his daughter. Something that is very interesting that most users to say it on YouTube who have been able to observe. It's the distancing of the view from the interviewer looking for information related to the case.
Again, yes?
We notice the gaze distances itself again in the interview and towards the interviewer. when the eyes or when the eyelids hide or when the gaze goes down. There is a kinesthetic element, a sensory of emotions, and a clear emotional conflict.
Honestly, the behavior of the parents can be analyzed as many times as they want, but it matters little. To make a correct analysis of their behavior, one should know them, know how they talk or express themselves in everyday life. All of that is just empty conjecture. What would have really mattered is a proper investigation. Perhaps on video, as is done now, photos of the entire room from end to end, not just the top part. With a photo that was already taken at that time, all of this could be easily resolved. We'll look at this a bit later. At least we would know what was and wasn't in the room. Prosecutors defended the investigation in multiple ways. They said that in the early days, they were looking for a living person. So, are the dogs used different for tracking living people or corpses? It would be either one thing or the other, not both simultaneously. And look, sometimes they are trained for both tasks, but it is true that it is not the most common for a dog to do both things. And one can say that's fine. I grant you this, it's okay. They were looking for a living person. They were looking for them outside and whatever you want. But while I was doing that, the room was still in use. Family members, house staff, and investigators were coming and going. What doesn't make sense is that no one realized that in that space of the bed, where a little girl fits perfectly, Paulette could be. Journalist Martín Moreno conducted an investigation, which was the basis for his book Paulette. What was not said is a short book, appropriate for how brief the case was. In this, he analyzes case files and cites them throughout the book. First problem, all of Paulette's clothes were freshly washed, so they were of no use to the tracking dog. That's why they ended up using a sheet from the room. How did they get the sheet? The person simply started to remove the blanket, pillow, stuffed animal, until they got to a sheet, and that's it. So, to get it out, the person pulled really hard, moving the mattress a bit. Then they spread the rest over it, without tidying up too much. Some pillows ended up on the floor. They also took a stuffed animal that they placed next to the sheet. All of this, so then, instead of examining the sheet, they could remove it from the complex to give to the canine, and thus be able to track the girl outside. That is, they didn't bring the dogs into the room right away. They did it from outside the complex. They gave them the sheet to smell, took a few turns around the block, and that was it. This sheet, with all kinds of fluids, appeared later with the quilt next to the body. Moreno also criticizes in the book that insufficient photos of the room were permitted, and that when it came to checking the family cars and contrasting the fingerprints found with those of Paulette, especially one found in the trunk of a Chevrolet Impala, it was done poorly. They compared the fingerprint of a single finger of the girl and said, okay, this does not match, as if she did not have 9 more fingerprints. However, the most important part of this whole story are the interrogations. There were 4 people, Lisette, Mother, Mauricio, and the nannies. The incredible thing is that during that period of a few days, all 4 blamed each other. Mauricio pointed at Lisette. He didn't even try to hide it. According to the report written by Prida Galicia, he clearly said that he knew where the body was, and that he would talk about it if he was legally protected. He immediately asserted that Lisette also knew where the body was. At the same time, Lisette stated that her husband had planned everything, whatever that means. And it wasn't the only time they confessed. They would have done it previously, in front of 2 agents from the prosecutor's office. All of this was not yet a confession. No one was attributing themselves to the girl's death. Erica said that Lisette herself had assured her that she shouldn't worry, that nothing was going to happen, that she was going to take care of everything, but they were released. The confessions would have been before the night of March 29th, before they found the body, but they didn't count. Or did something happen afterwards? Because nobody seemed to care that they had said before that they knew where the body was. What was written in those reports didn't matter. I'm going to repeat it. They questioned the family and the nannies. The father immediately said that he knew where the body was, and that his wife did too. Lisette said that her husband had planned this, and the nannies, Erica especially, said that Lisette had tried to reassure her because they had everything under control. According to the book, the guards of the building where the girl lived testified that she would have died on March 21st. The family had returned in the car. One of the guards noticed at that time that so they wouldn't get cold, Lisette ordered the girls to be covered up. She walked in hand with her older daughter and carrying in her other arm a bundle completely covered with a white blanket. Would that be Paulette? There are those who believe, based on this piece of information, that Paulette may have already been dead at that time. Moreno also highlights the polygraph test, which we know has long been considered a lie detector, so to speak. But in truth, it's more like a behavior test, something that should not be taken lightly. Anyway, in this test, several questions must be asked in order to make a correct profile of the person. The problem is that no more than 2 questions were asked to Paulette's parents. From this, psychological reports were requested for all those involved. This is where we have one of the worst statements made by Lisette in the whole case, and I quote, "If I were to lose Paulette, I have another daughter." As for Lisette's daughter, it was determined that there was a constant anger due to emotional displacement. That is, they gave a lot of importance to Paulette. As for the day prior to the disappearance, the older sister stated that she had become angry because when they returned from the trip and got out of the car, her parents had covered Paulette with her favorite blanket. Let's discuss a specific topic. Lisette's mother went on a trip with a friend, while Mauricio and his 2 daughters traveled to another destination. Much has been pointed out about the family's arrival at the apartment complex, when they completely covered the youngest daughter. Some think that Paulette was already dead at that time, but in that case, how did she die? Wouldn't Mauricio be more to blame? Was it planned? Did Lisette find out over the phone? It's an exaggeration to claim he had died by then. If so, we would be talking about a crime that was planned, or at least discussed long before the disappearance. Continuing with other interesting facts, Guillermo Gutierrez, director of the National Foundation for Research on Stolen and Missing Children, paid a visit to Lisette at the department. He asked to take a walk around the place and was terrified by the fact that the entire scene was contaminated. He also chose to search on his own. This included under the bed, meaning he bent down and brought his face closer. Not only did he not find Paulette, but he also didn't detect any strange smell. By March, almost April, it gets hot in Mexico. It would be very strange that after 4 days of being dead, she wouldn't emit some kind of stench. What Gutierrez was able to observe was that through the window in Paulette's room, her body could easily be removed, and from there to the elevator area without much trouble. Moreno's book covers the topics I just mentioned. You should read it. It's quite short, but it has excerpts from the reports that were made throughout the case, which again are not many. Because it was almost completely cut off very quickly. Even though the case was officially closed, the press still had a lot to say, but also to show. For instance, the leaked audio of a discussion between Lisette and her elder daughter, Chess, soon after Paulette went missing. In that conversation, released by the renowned investigative journalist Salvador Maceda, you could hear Lisette saying very strange things to her daughter. Which clearly raised suspicions about Lisette again, and it put her back in the eye of the storm. Annoyed with the journalistic harassment and popular hatred, Lisette appeared again in the media to say that the conversation that was circulating in all the media was not only taken out of context, but was also altered to make her look bad. She claimed that she had never asked her daughter to hide information, as that audio seemed to suggest. Another of the theories or controversies around this case arose through a YouTube video titled The Strange Case of Paulette's Pajamas. The video showed photos of the girl's body at the time of discovery, in which it was seen how Paulette was wearing a red pajama with reindeers, which was strange because in the interviews that Lisette had given, while they were still looking for their daughter, she had shown her room and on the bed, a pajama exactly the same, as if they were waiting for Paulette's return. For many, that the same pajamas had been shown clean and folded on the bed days before Paulette appeared with the same one on. It meant that the girl had not always been between the mattress and her bed. Even one of her nannies had said that those were the pajamas that the little girl had worn to bed the night of her disappearance. So, how was it possible that she had gone to bed in the pajamas that her mother had shown in the room days later, and finally appeared wearing them? Lisette simply responded that Paulette had two identical pajamas, and that's why she had shown an identical one in her daughter's room to the media. While the official theory says that Paulette suffocated by falling under the mattress, a bit smothered between her sheets, there are also some other hypotheses. We can't actually prove any, but they can be divided into two parts. One is accidental death and cover-up, and the other is murder. The murder is doubtful, at the very least, since the autopsy showed no signs of struggle or abuse. Although her body showed no signs of being touched, rumors still circulated. One in particular referred to rope marks on the girl's wrists and feet. The other hypothesis is that it was an accident. Some even claim to assert that Paulette's sister killed her while playing or angry. Either way, in that case, the parents would have chosen to cover up the fact by hiding the girl and reporting her as missing to the authorities. One of the things I can't understand is why public opinion turns towards Lisette saying that she killed her daughter. Perhaps it's because of the insistence of prosecutor Vaz, who was desperate to prove that she had killed her. Every time the case is mentioned, they only talk about Lisette. When Mauricio himself announced that he knew where the body was, and that his wife did too, as well as the nannies, nobody confessed what had happened. There are also no clues that reinforce people's hypotheses. In the interviews, both behaved strangely. In fact, both nannies claimed that the two parents seemed unconcerned about the disappearance, that while Mauricio started looking for her while Lisette sat down to smoke, he was not as desperate as they were. Neither of them showed tears or sadness. I think what perhaps stands out the most is the number of times Lisette appeared on television. That may have generated more hatred, but let's see. In conclusion, both parents were very strange. And not just them. The investigation was a mess. It's one of the worst investigations in high-profile cases I've seen so far. And already much about disastrous cases, about police who don't care, about investigators and forensic scientists who do more their job. But this is a level I can't explain. Among the reasons why Paulette's parents might have wanted their daughter dead is money, and what we could categorize as freedom. There are those who pointed out that Lisette had a lover and wanted to be freer than she was, a complication like having a daughter who required more care. Then the rumor came on strong that they had life insurance, which they first had to collect and then return. The body of the girl Erica, one of the nannies, claimed that the family was not going through a good economic time. They paid them late, they were slow to pay for the house services, they even asked them for borrowed money. Sometimes they didn't even pay the credit cards, and they were called all the time to ask for payments. The reality is that Paulette's care was too expensive. Even Lisette said she had nothing in her name, so the money issue could be. It was also thought that they could have planned some kind of self-rescue, that is, kill the girl, make her disappear, ask for money through the media, and then keep the cash. Honestly, I feel that what makes the least sense out of everything we mentioned is that the body appears again. Where was it before, and why did it appear in the room? If the hypotheses were true? So, what do you guys believe in? It's been 15 years since Paulette died today. Her remains were exhumed and cremated in 2017, as there was no reason to believe they could provide new evidence. More than 10 years ago, Maurice and Lisette officially divorced, and their relationship remains tense to this day. Although their lives will always be tied together by chess. Lisette Farah sued the Attorney General's office for $40 million for not doing their job properly. In addition, she claimed that she had been threatened with death and had a terrible time. She said that Enrique Peña Nieto was going to make her disappear if he became president. During the process, the prosecutor's collaborators claimed that Lisette likely had disorders of personality. It's that the
gentleman is responsible for being the head of the body that judged me, who made a page where everything that happened with my daughter is very clear. Well, that is a crime. Is the gentleman committing a crime? Why? Because it is assumed that a file must be kept confidential. If he becomes president, he's going to kill me. Today, he's nothing more than a candidate, and I
receive allegations
and threats every day.
In 2020, Netflix released a miniseries about this case and managed to reignite interest in Paulette's death and her family's involvement, putting chess in the spotlight, which in 2022, at 20 years old, she was forced to delete her TikTok account to avoid the huge list of insults and unpleasant comments on the videos where she appeared with her mother. Although the investigation concluded long ago that what happened was an accident, there are still many people who believe that in reality, the money from the two families promised to hide a dark crime against an innocent creature. And tell me, what do you think? Many people simply believe that whatever happened, whatever it was that happened, was actually the fault of one of the parents, and that it was resolved thanks to the money they had. I believe that this actually holds true more than in any other case, because how they found her is ridiculous. It just doesn't make any sense. I usually try to see the logic in things, because sometimes weird things happen, and it's completely possible. But in this case, that a body has been in one place for 9 days, that dogs pass by, that people pass by, that investigators pass by and nobody sees it. It's impossible. I mean, it's already impossible. Thanks again to CyberGhost Virtual Private Network for sponsoring this video. If you're looking for a virtual private network, honestly, it's an excellent option at a super reasonable and affordable price. In the description of this video, you will find the link to the special offer from CyberGhost Virtual Private Network with 4 free months. So don't miss out on this opportunity. Tell me your thoughts on this. I'm reading your comments. And here the video ends. So here are the Patreons and channel members. Thank you for supporting me through these means. With nothing else to say, here's a new video and a recommended one. You can subscribe by clicking on my face and see you in another video.